Everybody, welcome to another episode of Life is About More Than Living, a podcast. Tonight's special guest is Cece Hawk, author of the Slices of Life. You can find the links to purchase her book in her profile here, as well as on YouTube and where else we posted. There's an interactive conversation with her today, so we're going to dive right into this by bringing her on camera. And anyway, let's have some fun. All right. Miss CC Hawk, how are you? How are you again?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're more than welcome. You're the first guest I've had from the National Black Book Festival. Very long title. I always include all the words. I started diving into your book quite a little bit and found a particular chapter that I might bring up later on in the show. But right now, this is really laid back. You can see I'm wearing my Batman gear tonight because I'm in a Batman kind of mode tonight. Um, so I might go everywhere tonight with you. But please tell the people all about yourself as much as you like. And they want to read a bio that I stole from your website, they can. But let's keep this personal. And then I'm going to say one more thing after you do that part, and we can have some fun with this as we go live to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
All right. My name is Cece Hawk. I am an author. I published my first book in August of 2024. It's entitled Slices of Life, Essays, Fiction, and Memoir. There's 17 pieces in there in the book in 5 theme areas: coming of age, career and workplace, family and friends, travel and adventure, and love and marriage. So there's something for everyone. They're short pieces. If you don't have a lot of time, it's a good book to read while you're on the bus going to work, in the doctor's office, have it on your bedstand at night. So I've been writing since I was a little girl. Started off writing letters to people, writing in my diary and that sort of thing. I'm an only child, so I spent a lot of time by myself. While I had friends, I didn't have siblings that were in the house. So I wrote a lot to express my feelings when I thought people didn't understand me. And I just kept writing until I became an adult. Never really thought about publishing anything until I became older. I retired in 2021 after my husband and I moved from Chicago to the Texas Hill Country. And I decided that I wanted to focus on my writing. I had been taking writing classes throughout my life. And once I was in the San Gabriel Writers League, I joined a critique group to share my writing with people, which I had never really done before, and found that I got a lot of positive feedback about it. I entered a couple of writing contests and placed in those contests. So I thought that perhaps there might be an audience for the things that I had to say. So when I told myself I was going to publish my first book by my next birthday. And I felt the easiest way to do that was to take stories that I had been writing all along, as well as stories that I wrote during that year. And that was the birth of Slices of Life.
Very enlightening, very encouraging for those who have not started that bold journey yet. And some of them, and those individuals, I hope they have on this show. I've met quite a few writers in the last year or so. And I took a short dive into your book, and it really hit the heart. And I currently have another book that was given me a few weeks, last week actually, that last week's guest that I need to take a deep dive into. I try to include a quote, and for you, I found a particular quote by a Brazilian novelist that I would like you to play off of in more detail because it connects really to everything you just said. That quote is this: Pablo said, writing means sharing. It is part of the human condition to want to share things, thoughts, ideas, and opinions. And in your book, what I've discovered, you definitely share thoughts, a lot of ideas, and some very strong opinions about certain things. So let's play off of that.
All right. Yeah, I decided that I wanted to share because I felt I had some unique stories to tell because of my background, and that was a way for people to get a glimpse into my life. I'm an African American woman, but I think my background is quite different from a lot of other people. I attended a boarding school in New Hampshire, in Concord, New Hampshire. I was one of the first girls to attend this school that had previously been an all boys school.
Wow.
And so that's something that's very different about my background. It was a school that was a preparatory school for schools on the East Coast, and many of the students that went there went to Ivy League schools, which I did as well when I graduated. But out of a student population of 500 people, there were only 30 people of color. And that was not just African American people. When I say of color, that was Asian people, Native American people, people of Hispanic origin. So that was a very different kind of experience than most people probably have experienced. And then when I left that school, I went on to an Ivy League college in Massachusetts. So my time at the boarding school was in the mid 70s, and then immediately followed by the Ivy League school, which is Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Wow.
After that, I attended the University of Chicago Business School in Chicago, which is where I'm from, to obtain my master's degree in business administration. And so something that's really interesting about my background, and it always struck me as being very weird, really, was that in a lot of the jobs that I had, I was the first African American person to hold that job, which seemed odd to me, in the 80s and 90s. So had a lot of interesting experiences, people kind of reacting to my being in some of those places and spaces.
Well, because you being in places and spaces like that, especially in the time period when you did it, I perceive you as being a trailblazer. Other ladies of color coming up, maybe in Gate coming up now, may have arrived at a certain place in their life, maybe facing certain challenges in their life to break through certain other areas. And as a writer, I personally firmly believe that we have the ability to break down, kick down, knock down some doors that would normally stay closed to us. Simply for our gift of gab. But now I'm usually going heavily into my own personal spiel, but I'm gonna not go so much there tonight, other in the sense that my podcast is in some ways supported by my book, Split Souls in Transition. Definitely supported by people giving me stars on Facebook now. It's been linked to my personal page where I have about, I think, 3,000 followers on my personal page. Thank you for sharing this, because in the audio format, which will be uploaded to Spotify, which will send it out to Apple, Amazon Music, so people can say, "Hey Alexa, I want to hear so and so again," or as well as make sure I don't forget nobody. So I've worked hard to get into places on that. Apple Podcasts, Spotify is the feeder line for the audio. iHeartRadio, I mentioned Amazon, Alexa, Google Podcast, and a whole bunch of other places. I'm gonna make sure it gets global attention in the audio format. The YouTube format, we just had one YouTuber chime in and say hello, so I say hello back to them. And if they post comments, sometimes you can see them right up there. So anyway, let's take a little short dive. Where do I want to go with this? You got a lot to offer tonight. And let me think, where do I want to go with this? Okay, let's pretend you're not an author now. Let's pretend you're the person giving advice directly to a future author that wants to take that dive that you made after years and years. What would you suggest to that person?
I would suggest that they take writing classes is number one thing. That they write, give themselves a schedule and write. I usually write in the early morning. I get a lot of ideas either while I'm sleeping or just laying in the bed thinking about my day. But I think the most important thing for me in terms of getting this book published was joining a writers group. And I participated in a couple of writers groups when I was in Chicago. But I really got involved when we moved to Texas, because at that point I was retired. Prior to that, I was working, I'm married, had a son, and that sort of thing. So I was busy with those things. So once I retired, I said that I was going to focus on the writing. And so the advantages of being in a writing group are you're surrounded by people who are interested in the same things that you're interested in, that you can get critical feedback. I joined a critique group. The San Gabriel Writers League, is a larger group, and they offer monthly meetings where they have people come in and talk about all aspects of writing, in terms of the technical aspects of it, promotion, publishing, working with editors, that sort of thing. But you can also join a critique group where you meet with a few people who are writing in, similar genres to you, where you write something on a regular basis, like maybe monthly, where you write, a few thousand words and you distribute that to the group and they give you feedback on what you've written. And I found that to be particularly helpful to me because it was what I thought was objective feedback. I had gotten a lot of positive feedback from my husband, and he is a good writer himself. But I always was thinking that he was giving me a lot of positive feedback because he's my husband and he doesn't want to, offend me. He would tell me, this is really good. I think it's really good. And so, I believed him, but I wanted to get it from other people who didn't know me and didn't have, that kind of relationship with me, so they could be honest. So I think that that's important, to be in the company of other authors. And something that I've done since I published the book is formed collaboration with two other authors that are also in the San Gabriel Writers Group. And we have been promoting our books as a trio. And their books are about completely different things. And our first foray into this was at the Georgetown Library in Texas in March. During Women's History Month, we presented something called The Power of Women's Voices. And it included my book, which is Slices of Life. It included a book entitled Spared by Clementine Musingi, who is a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. And it's about how she escaped from Rwanda and came to America. And the third author is Carrie Dashnaw, and the title of her book is Yearning to Be Free. It's about her 14-year journey as a nun in the Catholic Church, and how she found that it was not what she thought it would be, and how she escaped that life. And she has now, been out of the convent for many, many years, is happily married, but it talks about her journey. And so the three of us have been doing this panel, and we've done it in several libraries in Texas, and it's been very successful. And I think the reason for the success is, one, we don't write about the same thing, so there's kind of something for everyone. Also, we support each other and we have different strengths. We also have shared with each other kind of what our journey has been, what our experience has been with publishers and editors and that sort of thing. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel about certain things. So that's been something that's been very fulfilling, and we think is very worthwhile. And I think it's something that people could consider to link up with others who are going to be supportive of you.
Yeah. In my early days, I still am on the Facebook group side of things. I joined a local group called the Writers of the Triad. and I submitted. I was engaging with the poet side of the group, the poetry side of the group, and I can't recall which poem I submitted for critiquing, which they said, if you choose to, you can submit a poem for critique by the group. No one's forced to do it, but if some of you want to do that, and I submitted one, and they shredded it, and I never went back because I knew my content was good, but the way they approached it, and again, first of all, I was one of I think two African Americans in the entire group. And I was in a different headspace then. And I never went back. 2 years later, be invited by the same group to present twice in National Poetry Month on two of their programs. As after I had began leading the open mic session for Greensboro Public Libraries every Monday night, the same group leadership invited me back to participate in a couple of years, not a couple of years on a certain time frame. So that being said, I pivot back to what you said about the importance of a writers group. Yes, hello, Ms. Deborah. How you doing on Facebook? Uh, thank you for the stars and the happy sign. She's loving you. She's like got 2 stars up there and our golden ring and all that good stuff. Um, I, so I pivot back to that to say that there's a lot of power and a lot of good in writers groups, and sometimes you don't have to necessarily agree with what they're putting out there. But when you get a collection of other writers, they will see things we don't see, and their opinions, take them with a grain of salt and use them as needed. Also, one of the former group leaders, um, became a good friend of mine over the years, and I and I've gained a lot of respect for her because she made a suggestion to me as a poet, which is different from your writing style. If I can, knowing that I'm very long-winded, I can write something, make my content shorter, and shorten it out a lot, streamline it more so. And I took that. A lot of that's been done in my book. But now back to the other side of that, what you just said, your collaboration part. So do you feel that you feel or believe, however you want to go about expressing yourself, that your collaborations have definitely empowered you to continue on your journey?
Absolutely. And for a minute, I can come back to that, but I want to touch
Okay.
on something that you just said about when you first presented your poem and it was not well received. I had that experience, many years ago when I tried to publish a children's book. And I went to a publisher with the idea, and the book was about my son's first trip to West Africa. And I went to a publisher that I thought it was in their wheelhouse. And I was just totally, to use your word, shredded by the publisher who, told me everything that I had done wrong. And while I think that it's good to have feedback, I think people shouldn't destroy you when they're giving the feedback. And so because of that experience, I was really gun shy about showing my writing to anybody after that happened. And it was years. That was when my son was 6 years old, and he's 34 now. He's 34 now. So I say that to writers, if you're giving feedback to your fellow writers, don't destroy the person with the feedback. It should be, constructive. So I want to say that I could really relate to what you were saying about that. And I guess other advice to writers is, don't just take one person's opinion. Don't let that destroy you. Keep going and find people who can support you in a positive way. So now I've forgotten your original question. If you repeat that, I'll answer.
Well, the power, because I do this off the cuff, but this is my area where I'm laser focused, so I don't forget like I don't normally do. The question was, how do you feel that how do you feel
Okay.
collaborations will empower other writers, as you've demonstrated in your words that your collaboration has helped you? In what ways how do you feel it will empower others to do the same?
Yeah, I think I think it's been very helpful because, again, we're three very different people, three different writing styles, three different things that we're writing about. So we complement each other rather than we're not in competition with each other. So, I mean, that's the great thing. And the other thing is we haven't done everything together. We've done our separate things. But for instance, if one of us is not available for an event, two of us will go, but we'll still rep the book of that other person. We might be on the panel and have their book sitting up there. We're still supporting them. So it's just nice to have other people who are going through the same thing that you're going through, at the same time, to just compare notes on how things are going in terms of when you're at certain venues. We've done several different things. We've done libraries, we've done like community events, like we did something here in Texas, a Juneteenth festival. In Austin, the Austin Public Library does what they call Gab Fest. It's the Greater Austin Book Festival, where they celebrate and promote local authors. We participated, only two of the three of us participated in that. And I was actually a speaker. I was selected to be a speaker on one of the panels, but we also shared a booth during the book fair to sell our books. And so, when I was speaking or at one of the workshops, my partner would be at the booth and vice versa. So, it's just good to have that support, that somebody has your back.
And that means a lot. From 2005 to 2010, when I first started out, I had no idea. I know those years specifically because I walked away and closed down a meetup group. It was Triad Poetry Meetup, and it included singers and musicians that wanted to participate as well, but primarily poets and spoken word poets. And we did events, and this wasn't so much selling books because none of us had books back then, and I had thought of it in my head, but didn't have a book. So we pretty much collaborated and brought attention to the creative fields of writing, singing, spoken word, regular traditional poetry, whatever, to parks. We've done it in parks where one of the local supermarket chains gave us ice, so people have ice water instead of just ice water. We were in parks. We worked a lot in the library, the main library in Greensboro, and it went from 50 to about 200 people on the books. And I'm bringing that back in to say that I finally put on my calendar. I will be launching another group in the next 6 weeks to bring together similar like-minded folks. And we'll be doing some virtual events in the beginning, but I also have a venue that tentatively event called Pizza and Poetry to bring in teenagers and up, because a lot of content we bring are for teenagers and up. It ain't for little kids. I say that all to say that, going back to the collaboration part and knowing what I know now, having a platform such as this where I was able to bring you on, it's going to open up a lot of doors for a lot of people to get exposure to their craft. Because I already had some people up here, other guests that sang. They let me know in advance. We're going to talk about politics, but I'm going to turn the politics to a song. So they actually sang. And I've had a range of guests on a range of topics. And everyone in one way or another connects back to the person. And how they connect to you is that they all had stories in their heart based off of real life events, or they created something and they fed into it, which brings me back to the next point I want to hit home. My book is also considered a memoir in certain channels like Amazon and other places. As a memoir writer, why do you think that's why would you think you, as a memoir writer, you are impacting people as a memoir writer? Because that's
what do I think? What? Say the last part.
Okay, as a memoir writer, and I still
Mhm.
struggle with that word, so I want to say something different. Memoir writer, how do you think as a memoir writer you're impacting people? Because that's a different genre than poetry, than story, than essay. How, as a memoir
Okay.
writer, how do you think you're impacting people?
I think that when you share your stories, well, you're being vulnerable for one thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit scary. But I think that all of us are human. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have common experiences as people who are humans, living on the
Mm-hmm.
planet. And so sometimes people feel isolated, like something has only happened to them. But then
Mm-hmm.
when they read about other people who've had the same experience and have overcome it, that's very helpful to them. I know a couple of my stories in my book, especially in the coming of age section, have really resonated with a lot of people, from young people to old people. And
Mm-hmm.
and that was really surprising to me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I have a story in there about going to camp, my
Mm-hmm.
first experience going to, away camp,
Mm-hmm.
where I was at camp for 2 weeks. And I would describe it as my encounter with what people now call mean girls. And I was a pretty sheltered kid. Again, I was an only child. And I went to this camp that was predominantly Caucasian. And I was in the cabin. I was the only African American person in the cabin, and I got ostracized, and just a lot of things happened that were not positive from my
Mm-hmm.
perspective. But my mom, who had grown up completely differently from me, I would say my background was more middle class. She would describe her upbringing as that they were poor. And so she wanted me to have all these experiences that she didn't have. And she was kind of like living vicariously through me. And she just thought I was going to have a wonderful time at camp. It was not wonderful at all for me. And I had like 80-year-old women telling me that they'd had, a similar experience, and it just took them back to something that happened in their
Mm-hmm.
lives, as well as younger women saying, I had an experience like that. And that really resonated with me. And then the other story that's in my coming of age section, which is based on my life,
Mm-hmm.
was about a situation I had where I was friends, or thought I was friends, with a group of young ladies. And I was sharing with them, I was about 13 years old when this happened, sharing with them how there was a boy that I liked who liked me. And he wanted to take me out to lunch. The school that I went to when we were in 8th grade, you could go off campus for lunch. And they discouraged me from accepting his invitation, saying that he was not a cool boy, and, it's going to be social suicide for me to be seen with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to find out, a week later, that, one of the girls who had been encouraging me not to accept his invitation spoke with him, or chased him at a Sadie Hawkins dance. I don't know if people are familiar with the Sadie Hawkins dance, but
Certain people
Sadie,
around a certain generation are, and we have
yes.
some
Okay.
people in that generation that follow the show on Spotify.
Okay. Well, a Sadie Hawkins dance is where the girls pursue the boys. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of these girls, who was supposed to be my friend, pursued him. And, after my rejection of him, he asked her to go out to lunch, and she went. And that just
Wow.
totally destroyed me, because it was like I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that.
I guess that reminds me of the old school song Backstabber, smiling in your face.
Yes, but
All the time, I want to take your place.
I had never
Yeah.
experienced anything like that before. I felt like your friends were your friends, and they had your back, and they had your best interest at heart. And I found out that wasn't true, that people could be deceptive. And so that was a lesson that stayed with me. It stayed with me. I'm much older now. I've reached a
There
certain age, and
are
And the sting of that has stayed with me.
See, now you can smile about it, but at that time there was no smiling, I imagine. You were
Oh
probably like,
no,
oh,
I cried
wow,
all
yeah,
weekend. Uh,
wow.
After that, I cried all weekend. And at the time, my mother's youngest sister was actually more like a sibling to me because she was only 4 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And, she sat with me while I cried and, gave me advice and told me that, I needed to trust my own gut. If I had evaluated someone's character and that sort of thing, and if I liked the person, it didn't make any difference what other people thought. And that was a lesson that stayed with me, that, I didn't need other people's approval about relationships, and whatever they thought about the person, that was their thoughts, and that I should follow my gut. And I've done that. And so that was a lesson, though hard learned, has served me well. And my husband and I have just celebrated 38 years of happy marriage.
Congratulations on you both. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a long time. Which kind of, I don't want to go on a darker side of things, but
Okay.
there's the one chapter I did finish that's eating away at me.
Uh-oh, I think I know what it
Now,
is.
take a guess.
Was it The Unhappily Ever After?
Right there, where yeah, I made myself finish the whole chapter because I want to see how
Yeah.
that thing ended. Okay.
Yes. Well, that was a story about people who were married for a long time. And unfortunately, that happens a lot where people stay married and they may not be happy.
Or was it based in real life people or fiction? I'm just curious.
It's fiction. It's
Okay.
fiction. But based on some things I've heard.
Well, and I've known a couple. I've known of a couple that we can lived in High Point, and it's not everybody can't do it. He lived in the basement. She lived upstairs. They kept their home, and she had her boyfriends upstairs, and he had his girlfriends downstairs. But that's how they
Yeah,
sustained
sometimes
it.
life is stranger than fiction.
Yeah,
Sometimes
you might make a story up about that I just gave you. I hope you do. But that was a real life event I've heard about. But go back to your storyline, what you just talking about. I cut you off.
Well, no, I was just going to say a lot of times people they keep their vows. They want to keep the vows. And in that story, I guess I'll just give a little sketch about what it's about, where a couple were married and the wife felt like, her life, she wasn't being self-actualized in her life. And so she, even though they had several children together, at some point she walked of the house and walked out of the marriage to pursue an affair with another man. But the husband, he remained true to his vows, and he had made the vow. And so, he didn't have other girlfriends or that sort of thing. But something happened in the relationship with the wife and the lover. They broke up, and she asked to come back home, and he allowed her to come back home, but they were living separate lives, as you have described about the situation that you knew about. And so he was saying that he had kept his vows, that he didn't, that he had said that before God, and he meant it, but it really hurt him. And so the story begins when the wife is dying, or the wife has died, and the children want to, as people so often do on obituaries, kind of rewrite history to make it seem like that they were very happy. Even though they were quote unquote together for all those years, it really was, in the latter years, it really was not a marriage. And so he refused to continue that ruse of what, people may have thought. So that's what the story is about.
Now I want to take a deep dive into another one that I think people kind of envision, maybe could relate, not relate to, that I've glanced over under career and workplace, because we deal with some things in the workplace. If walls could talk, let's give me
That is
five.
based on reality. The story is
Okay.
fiction. The story is fiction, but it's into me. And when we started
Hmm.
this conversation, I said that it was a surprise to me in a lot of the jobs that I had. I was the first Black person that ever did
Hmm.
the job. And so that story is based on the woman in the story being a manager in a large facility that had never had, a Black woman be in charge.
Hmm.
And one of the Caucasian people at that facility wanted that job.
Hmm.
And so he was plotting to try to get something on her to get her fired from the job. And like I said, this is based on reality. How I
Hmm.
describe the
That's,
story is not
that's why I
exactly.
want to touch it. That's why I want to swing in that direction, because people can relate to workplace drama or
Mhm.
scheming, and sometimes it's by the best of people with the worst intention.
Yes. Like I said, the fundamentals of this actually happened to me,
Mm.
where this person was trying to find something on me. I guess thought I was going to be doing something wrong. And he would break into my office and, go through
Wow.
things and try to find something. But what happened was in the story and in real life,
Mm.
um, one of the two African American men who worked there had my back. And
Mm.
they told me, one of them told me what was happening. And so I worked with the maintenance person to get all the locks changed um, on the my file cabinets.
Wow.
And so um, this person who was breaking into the office every night had access to all the keys because there was like a
Mm.
master key box, and this person was in management,
Mm.
and so they could get the key to any office and anything that was going
Mm.
on. So I worked with the maintenance man to have all the locks changed on the files in my office. And
Mm.
so he couldn't tell anybody, that I broke into our office and I can't get into the files anymore. So,
Yep.
that actually happened. Now,
Wow.
in the story is, fictionalized, where there's some things where I had something set up where when he got into my phone system, I left a message for him and that sort of thing. That didn't happen. But he couldn't break into my files anymore.
Okay.
And again, he couldn't tell anybody because what could he say? Oh, I was in her office and I can't get in the files anymore.
Right. You keep telling himself. Uh,
Yeah, that happened.
I didn't know it was, yeah. Like I said, I glimpsed over, but that's deep. Uh, this is gonna hit a nerve. It's gonna hit a personal nerve in a way, because it's something that hasn't really happened yet a lot. But what are some words of encouragement, like me, who talks about traveling a lot, hasn't really done a lot of it, and currently not in a position to do it, but will be in a position to do it. Currently not, because I took another full-time job right now, but they don't give me the freedom I once had. But this is for a season. Uh, what would you say to those individuals who want to travel? Because you mentioned you traveled quite a bit, eh, as to the importance of traveling as it relates to writing.
Oh, I'd love to travel, as you have mentioned. To date, we have been to all 7 continents, and before in my book it says we've been to 38 countries. We just got to the 39th a couple of weeks ago. We went to Panama, but certainly
Wow.
travel is a wonderful thing to do in terms of writing stories and creating stories and just really reporting on what you've seen. And in fact, my husband and I would like to do some more travel writing because we've, experienced a lot of things throughout our travel. And so travel has always been a priority for us. Other people have different kind of priorities. Like some people, their priority is to have the latest car or to have the latest technology and that sort of thing. And that's never been our priority. And in fact, our 34-year-old son, still talks to us about how he couldn't have a Nintendo and that sort of thing. And it's like, no, our priority is travel. It's like, when you do this, no one can take that away from you. It's like, well, I worked for an airline for 16 years. So my son has pretty much been all over the world. And, but other people had like a Nintendo or a Game Boy and that sort of thing. And I was like, get a book, read it. You've seen the changing of the guard in London. You've seen the crown jewels. All that's more important than some Nintendo. That's going to go out of style. And it's interesting because now that he's 34, he's appreciating that, I think, more. In fact, he's just come back from a trip to Thailand this year. And then a few months ago, he went to Japan. So he's caught the travel bug and he appreciates it more. But when he was a little boy, he wanted the Game Boy. But I think, make it, if you want to travel, make it a priority. Don't drink those $5 cups of coffee every day.
So how does that impact your writing style?
Traveling, well, it's given me some interesting things to write about. In my book, there is a section on travel and adventure, and I've certainly got more stories to tell about that. But two of the stories in the travel and adventure, one is about a trip to Ghana, West Africa, our first trip to Ghana, West Africa. And that was before our son was born. We've been back a couple times since then. And that was the origin of the book, the children's book that I was trying to get published, which I have promised myself I will get published. And then there's another story about our travel to Madrid, Spain, where I was pickpocketed, and how my husband and I chased down the pickpocketers and retrieved our property. And so, things happen. So yeah, that's one of the stories. And I guess then there's another story in there, but I think it's in the probably love and marriage section, a kind of a fictionalized story based on a woman I met from Brazil, and a love story that was occurring between her and the doorman at the hotel that we were staying at. He was a doorman, but he was highly educated. As a lot of times in certain countries, people have advanced education, but they can't get a job in their field. So that was a story about. It was called Maria and Sergio, and it's just something I imagined watching them interact in the hotel.
That's okay. That's what that was cool. That's core of what I was getting at. Is how travel impacted your writing. Because as of today, for other writers who come on this show, it's a heavy burden to bear being the first from the book festival. But you're the first one from the book festival, so you're setting the level of reach for the next ones. And it's not so much comparison as it is about impact, about being genuine with what you're doing. My experience is only my experience is local. Has been to meet writers who start out, and some of them are friends of mine. I see randomly every couple of years or whatever, bump into them. But they're still friends of mine who start out as I have did in the beginning as self-publishing author, as a self-publishing author. And their book, their product goes here, but it never goes here. or there, and they give up and they just leave it where it's at. I was blessed to have a publisher who happened to be my eldest son. So I saw the fancy work at the festival. He did the book and all that stuff. Um, and it opened up a different kind of door for me. However, in the midst of things, as a writer, I stumbled across podcasting. And now it's been at a whole different level this particular year since February. Because I started doing it in this format for the most part. Because in this format of live streaming, I'm able to do as we're doing, reach a greater audience, more people, and have people tell their stories. And it boosts me up as a writer. It's improved my writing skills. Like I created your whole episode bio and summarized it, shortened it in like 35 minutes a day. When I first started, it would take me about 2 hours to create the show content. Um, Plus, I met you in person, and we had a good conversation. My wife met you, and here we are. So that kind of made it easier too. It's easier when you know somebody. But I'm saying it to say that is that Life is About More Than Living, a podcast, has got several authors from that festival coming on, and other authors have already been on, and more will connect with me as we go forward. And I say that all to say that this has turned out from being more of an inspirational, motivational, boom, empowerment, go get it type podcast to a life story, writer, speaker type show. And the audience has changed quite a bit because, especially with us being African American, now we're speaking largely, and I don't mind putting numbers out. Some people hate me giving numbers, but I give numbers a lot. Numbers let me know which direction to go in sometimes. We're speaking largely to a Caucasian. In the South, I still call white folk, but Caucasian audience, male demographic in their 40s to mid 50s. People that normally might not pay attention to what we're doing are paying attention on this podcast.
Hmm.
And your book will be going into dope rooms they may not went into before. And they have the link to Amazon to get it. They have the link to your website, which you shared with me earlier today, to get it from there. Actually, your website, I'm plugged into that now. I went to that same service. I'm like, I
Okay.
never heard of this. I never heard of this, that collaboration part. So I set my account up today. And even though I had a publisher, it automatically pulled up the three major places my books had for sale online. I was like, this is so
Mhm.
cool. I would never known that without you today. You like, here's my website. And I went over there like click, 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 fill in the blanks. So next week I'll launch it. And it gave me the option to send it back, people back to my link tree where I can ship my books directly myself once
Yes.
I pay for it. So I'm like, I got a four-hit wonder thanks to you today. I never knew that such a site even existed. It was like easy to set it up.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I'm gonna add that link for other authors' benefits. I'm gonna update this bio on YouTube once it's published, once I close everything out. Uh, and then I publish it on audio format. The link will be there, so other authors can have that resource. Actually, let me see. Can I pull it up right now, real quick? So while you're speaking about, we're going to go with, since we've been kind of heavy, how you use your stories to explore life's experiences with humor.
Oh,
That
oh,
side of things.
of humor.
Yeah, as I pull that website up, I'm gonna tell you your life, your thing with humor.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the things are, humorous. I I think that, well, one of the things, I have a story called Crooks versus Christians. While it's based on a real thing that happened.
Hmm.
I thought, parts of it were humorous. It actually was based on something that happened to my mom and my aunt, that they were held up by two young African American teenagers at gunpoint. But my mother's a
Hmm.
really feisty person, and she fought back with this kid, and it was kind of like their first rodeo, so he got scared and ran. And so the humorous part of it is that they thought that they were gonna have this life of crime, that they were gonna do these things, but they found out that crime doesn't always pay, and they were trying to get into this gang. I made this part up. They're trying to get into a gang in Chicago, and to rob somebody was their initiation, was going to be their initiation. But they flubbed it. And so they determined that it was best for them to go back to their job at McDonald's and not try to be some criminals. So, I mean, to me, it was, that part of it was humorous. Although it was a very real thing that happened. But I wanted to show that, the young men that they did, have, they've been raised by people who had given them some values, but they had been, trying to impress these older, old heads that, that they could do it. But then they realized, hey, my grandma told me, if I get in jail, don't be calling her. So
Yeah, so
yeah,
you definitely have a way of reaching across the great spectrum of people and thoughts. You are definitely, in my opinion, doing just what, living out the quote, which is part of the human condition to share things, ideas, and opinions. Some people, so many, as the saying goes, go to their grave with their gift or their life stories inside of them instead of making a difference, or the life stories of other people. Split, social position, fiction, and fact mixed together, part two. Is it worked on? Okay, I'm finally getting down to working on book two. Uh, uh, the supplement to that, because it ended, but it didn't end. I bring that up to say that if anyone's ever read one of the longest books I ever read, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Uh, it's some of that supernatural, poetic mixture of power and poetry, and when it's finally finished, I'm throwing that entice the audience. That book two, when it has an official title, uh, Split, it's gonna dive into that kind of stuff with real life people though. The same real life people named them Split and carrying them over. Plus, I've actually made a phone call to get a backstory of some people so I can fictionalize it, and it's gonna be told through poetry as well as similar memoir and poetry book when it finally comes out at some point. Hopefully next year, maybe year after next. Uh, all that to say now that you have inspired me. Uh, Number one, through your emails all day, making sure we stay on task, making sure we stay on task. You inspired me. And another guest I had on before today, he reached out to me, asked me to give him a suggestion on one of three subtitles for his next book. That's never happened before. So I've had you this evening and Scott Grace email me about another one of his books, and it makes a difference when I'm able to bring to this show the power of collaboration, the power of inspiration, on a resource like I just did, and I didn't shorten the links; it's very long there, so I'll do something about that later. To the site that you are now using, that I think we all can use, is very affordable. But the power of collaboration, the power of inspiration, and I don't always walk that out in my day-to-day life. Uh, but thanks again to you and other individuals I'm able to do that. I'm going to wrap this up. We touched upon career, mentioned family throughout it, travel, humor, Hmm. I don't want to use to ask this question because I don't really have a super favorite author. But if do you have a favorite author? Do you have a personal source of inspiration in an
There are
author?
a couple authors I really like. I like J. California Cooper. She
Mm-hmm.
writes or wrote a lot of short stories.
Mm-hmm.
I like Pearl Clegg.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she's written a lot of things, novels, plays, and that sort of thing. I also like Terry McMillan because she's
Mm-hmm.
very her writing is very raw and real. But two of my very favorite ones are J. California Cooper and Pearl Clegg.
Okay.
Um, so they since I'm writing in a short story format now, J. California Cooper mostly does short stories, and Pearl Clegg does some short stories, and she's got novels, as I said, and plays um, as well. So,
Now listen, let me ask you as an experienced author, and I haven't looked it up because I think purchase story, which comes off a split, m- might qualify as a short story. What qualifies as a short story for those that don't know, in
hmm,
your opinion? It ain't gonna be
I,
the whole
I,
technical definition,
I'm
in your
trying to
opinion.
think of what the technical
Well, I don't have
definition
to be
is.
technical, in your opinion, how you when you finally finished up, it was considered a short story. What qualified
Well,
as a
well, it's short for one thing. I mean, I guess I need to look that up how many words that would be, but that tell the story, you get it in, and it's not, a novel. So it's not hundreds
okay?
of pages. You can get to the
100,
point.
okay. Because I know a poetry collection is 70 pages or less, and I know split part two of splits can go a lot longer than 70 pages. Um, and that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, some
Um,
of mine are really short, like, 7 to 10 pages, and some of them, like 20, 25 pages.
right, but when you put them together as a collection, that's what I'm leaning toward. This would probably be a collection of short stories. Because
Yes.
because really, when you look at the book, the Iliad and Odyssey, in my opinion, from reading it, and I'm now listening to it again, almost 40 years later, the audio book, it's a 20-hour listen. Each section covers a different part of history and the story of Troy. So it's like you get this part, that part, that part. And in the end, it's this very long novel. But I'm not trying to go that route. I love what you have done with this, and I've had other books similar. The story is pretty much like this, a collection. And
Yeah,
only
the
difference in
thing.
your book here, you have essays, fiction, and memoir.
Yes.
So, so that being said, yeah, that's enough. I think that's a good enough answer for anyone that's taking that deep dive. Uh, and let the publisher, whoever, label it, because again, it can be 10 pages, 12 pages, whatever. Uh, then you put them all together, you get a larger book. uh,
Yes.
I I probably smile more. I smile so much on this show. I need to start. I need to practice smiling more like that in a day to day because I get these crazy, amazing people. I don't. I say crazy, amazing people. This show has been around. I'm in year number 8.
Wow.
Video, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Live streaming in this format since February of this year. Uh, Using a different service now, Spotify, which is great for podcasters. Those that don't every everyone doesn't know that much about podcasting, and some people have this fancy equipment. I keep mine simple: headset, laptop, additional screen. Boom. How you do it is your choice. I'm saying all that to say is that I strongly encourage anyone, regardless of what format they're using, to take a dive into podcasting. To
Hmm.
take a dive by going on Spotify for creators and creating an account. I take especially encourage authors. You can use whatever format you do. I'm kind of wary of social media, though I stream to Facebook, and I know Facebook's doing a lot of filtering now, and they really have control of your content and where it goes, and they get more and more control. So in a day, they can pull everything. Your work is gone unless you save it. That can happen in other places. However, by podcasting arena is yet to happen that way. Other than like they gobble each other, like Spotify purchased the original company Anchor, so it's flipped it up and rebranded it. But I'm saying this to say that I hope that you will consider, if you have time, to take a deep dive into this podcasting arena. There are people who do their books over there and they share their short stories. It's a great marketing resource. Like you said, 10 pages long. I have been to a recent open mic. It is the first one I've been to in a very long time, ever, very, very long time, where someone got up there who was a novelist. And I'm expecting poetry, and she read about 10 to 12 pages for her novel. But they had no time limit on it, so they allow people to do that. Uh, just take a deep dive, look over at Google Spotify creators, give it some thought. You hear set on the mic, it's audio only, unless you choose to do video. Um, because what you shared with me, snippets of your story, it'd be a great way to sell more books. And it allows you to create a link directly to your website for your book, which
Mm-hmm.
circulates. Like this show here, it's gonna probably the next 7 days. It'll be played in at least 5 to 6, maybe 10 countries uh, as audio format, in audio format. Uh, which is another reason I want to bring more writers such as yourself up here. My revenues and dividend comes in two forms: connection, collaboration, and empowerment. When I'm feeling like crap, I know this show feeds me, and the financial part is now beginning to feed me as well uh, by bringing great people. I don't say that lightly. Great people on my show. Uh, Life is about more than living, which I sometimes forget my own slogan and my own show title. It can only be about connecting with other people, uh, writer group collaborations, guests such as yourself who are genuine, not the ones you look on social media. They got 100,000 followers and everything they did it with AI. It's not even real. Uh, that's it for us, though. So anyway, let's wrap this up. I've enjoyed you. I enjoyed you to the point that we went an hour and 3 minutes. Probably had at least maximum about 12 people live that I could see. Um, and
Well,
closing it out.
I want to
I
thank you for having me, and I really appreciated meeting you and your wife at the National Black Book Festival. And so
Mhm.
I think, going to events like that is really helpful for networking. And so I appreciate you.
You're more than welcome. Uh, it's kind of on the back burner right now, but it's in the thought process realm of doing possibly more than likely it would be a book fair here to bring authors in to Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting it there early because you and others suggested to us to do something like that. I don't know how it's going to come into fruition right now. I've done a lot of research on it. Uh, Book fairs can accommodate, on average, accommodate 10 to 20 authors. I just saw one that a library was doing somewhere. Uh, they were doing this like a 2 hour event. We need more than that. But that's a sidebar point. I'm not getting lost and take away from what you just said. Meeting you and your husband was a good thing. Almost didn't walk to your table, but I made it up there like, this is interesting. Let's check it out. And got your book. Um, and who knows? This may
Yes. Well, we
this
look forward to connecting with you and your wife in the future.
yeah, she's supposed to be tuning in tonight. I kind of wish I brought her on screen, but that's my point. Now we late in it now, so maybe another time. Uh, I'm currently leaning toward having a women's episode in Women's History Month in March.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, After speaking with you this evening, it'll probably be a collaboration because I have the author I had on last week, and I think you and her. She does more of the Therapy for America type thing. You see the show on my YouTube channel. Healing, books dealing with healing through this political climate we're in. Uh,
Mhm.
like you said, bring some. I may just do that. Invite her back along with you and maybe another female author. Uh, I'll likely probably my wife up here to have a three-way thing going, different writers, different styles in Women's History Month to make real time history. I haven't fully worked it out yet, uh, but I'm leaning in that direction for March because this show is doing what it do. It's been
Okay.
blessed by God. It was due for 8 years, and now it's really exploded this year. Uh, thank you again. You
Thank
thank me, but
you.
I thank you again.
I wish you
I'm
much
gonna take.
success with your
Oh,
show and with your poetry and with your upcoming book fair.
yeah, because if it is, it's gonna come from majority of the people who come this stack of people I met at the festival.
Okay.
These are connections from the festival. I got them already logged into my email file thing. But all said and done, like I'm gonna take your camera, close the
All
show
right.
out. We have a brief. We have a brief. Don't go nowhere. We have a brief close out off camera. And everyone, please go out if you actually go online, order her book, Slices of Life. Uh, support what she's doing. Be empowered by this lady. Her stories feed your soul. Uh,
Can I say
and
follow me on Facebook? CC Hawk
you say
Wright.
anything you want to say. Follow you on Facebook.
I'm
Facebook
on
link is there as
Facebook.
well.
I'm on Instagram. CC
Yeah,
Hawk Writes.
yeah. I get your Facebook profile in the link. I stopped. I lost my connection to Instagram, and Facebook has not re-established it. So I done gave up on Instagram. But
Okay.
uh, but it definitely got you your Facebook link and your website. CC Hawk Rights is there, as well as your Amazon link for direct purchases. If in case anyone missed it in the text, they can see it at the end.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
you're more than you're more than welcome. So let me take off camera for a minute and
Okay.
close this thing out. Don't go nowhere.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Mm, thank you, everyone, for catching another episode of Life is More Than Living, a podcast. Please click the links, purchase my book, Split Souls and Musician. Click the links and purchase Slices of Life, essays, fiction, and a memoir. You have a great evening, great night. May peace and blessings go to you all. Until we meet again on Life is About More Than Living, a podcast.